and welcome to the Master Approach to Language, the Deutsch edition, an effective and efficient mini-course designed for beginners. So in today's 5th lesson, we are really going to pack more in than we have in any other lesson, and this is really essential stuff here. And by the end of the lesson, your vocabulary and your ability to use the German language will skyrocket. We're going to look at the past tense, and we're going to look at a few time words and how those work in the sentences. Now we're going to look at an extremely important and useful verb that means to do, and it also means to make. It can mean both in German. Machen.
Machen.
Now if we want to change that and say did or made, here's what we do. Gemacht.
Gemacht.
You will often see a GE at the beginning of words in past tense form. Now to express I did it, here's what we would say. Ich habe es gemacht.
Ich habe es gemacht.
The verb to say in German is sagen.
Sagen.
Now the same thing we just did with machen, we're going to do with sagen by adding a GE and transforming the verb to say into said. Gesagt.
Gesagt.
Now how do you think we would say you said it? Keeping in mind that it is the verb haben that will be conjugated, not the verb sagen. Du hast es gesagt.
Du hast es gesagt.
The word for yesterday is gestern.
Gestern.
Now if we want to say yesterday I did it, something interesting happens. When we put a time word in front of the sentence, the first two words are inverted. So let's look at that. Gestern habe ich es gemacht.
Gestern habe ich es gemacht.
A very important word, the word for something, is etwas.
Etwas.
How would you say she said something? And keep in mind where the final verb will go. Sie hat etwas gesagt.
Sie hat etwas gesagt.
Now, keeping in mind the inversion that takes place when we start the sentence with a word like yesterday, how do you think we would say, yesterday he said something to me? And you'll have to think back to how we say to me. We saw an example of that word with, for example, how goes it to you? And it goes to me good. So try and remember that, and don't worry if you don't get it. We'll look at it here in a sec. Gestern hat mir etwas gesagt.
Gestern hat mir etwas gesagt.
How would you say, what did you do? Was hast du gemacht?
Was hast du gemacht?
I don't want to confuse you, and so I'll tell you now, words like yesterday and tomorrow, they don't have to go at the beginning of the sentence. And so in this case, how would you say, what did you do yesterday? The most important is to remember where the final verb will go. Was hast du gestern gemacht?
Was hast du gestern gemacht?
The word for today is heute.
Heute.
How would you say, what did they do today? Was haben Sie heute gemacht?
Was haben Sie heute gemacht?
How would you say, he said it to me today? And in this case, we don't want to have today at the beginning. We want to have it in the middle, because don't forget, the final verb will always go at the end. Er hat es mir heute gesagt.
Er hat es mir heute gesagt.
Here's how to say a word which is surprisingly important in German and very commonly used, and that is already. To say that, we say schon.
Schon.
And try not to confuse this with the word schön, which means pretty. That one has a ö, this one has an o. So with this sentence, I already told you, keep in mind that we can substitute to say for told. And this is one of those verbs that takes the dative case, which basically means we're not going to just say you, like do, we're going to say to you. So how would you say that? Ich habe es dir schon gesagt.
Ich habe es dir schon gesagt.
How would you say we already did that? Wir haben das schon gemacht.
Wir haben das schon gemacht.
This one is nice and easy. To say I was, we say ich war.
Ich war.
How would I say I was tired? Ich war müde.
Ich war müde.
How would I say today I was tired? Keeping in mind that the word today is like the word gestern, yesterday, in that it changes the sentence a little bit and switches the order of the first two words. Heute war ich müde.
Heute war ich müde.
So how do we say yesterday and today? Gestern und heute.
Gestern und heute.
Now we're going to leave the past for a moment and look to the future. The word for tomorrow is morgen.
Morgen.
The word tomorrow acts just as today and yesterday in that it changes the order of the first two words. So, to say tomorrow we are going home, we would say morgen gehen wir nach Hause.
Morgen gehen wir nach Hause.
How do you think we would say tomorrow we can do it? Keep in mind that the full verb for to do is machen. And remember how verbs are normally conjugated with wir und sie. Morgen können wir es machen.
Morgen können wir es machen.
Another very common word, the word for sometimes is manchmal.
Manchmal.
Once again, putting the word sometimes at the start of the sentence will change the order of the next two words. How would you say sometimes I did that? Manchmal habe ich das gemacht.
Manchmal habe ich das gemacht.
A quite useful and free phrase is not so often, which in German is nicht so oft.
Nicht so oft.
Sometimes she did it, but I have not done it so often. Take it piece by piece and don't worry if you can't remember all of the words. We'll go over it in a second. Manchmal hat sie es gemacht, aber ich habe es nicht so oft gemacht.
Manchmal hat sie es gemacht, aber ich habe es nicht so oft gemacht.
How would you say, today I was very happy? Do you remember the word very and happy? Heute war ich sehr glücklich.
Heute war ich sehr glücklich.
Here's another easy word. To see is
sehen.
Sehen.
Now we've seen how machen becomes gemacht and sagen becomes gesagt, but there are other verbs that are conjugated a little bit differently, and in this one we'll see that it keeps the GE, but instead of having a T at the end, it's the full verb. So,
Gesehen.
Gesehen.
how would you say, I saw the young woman?
Ich habe die junge Frau gesehen.
Ich habe die junge Frau gesehen.
Do you remember in the last lesson what happens to masculine nouns when they are in the accusative case, or in other words, when they are the object of a sentence? If so, how would you say, I saw the dog?
Ich habe den Hund gesehen.
Ich habe den Hund gesehen.
How would you say, yesterday we saw the house?
Gestern haben wir das Haus gesehen.
Gestern haben wir das Haus gesehen.
The verb to eat is
Essen.
Essen.
Now this is easy because it's the same word. To say the food is
Das Essen.
Das Essen.
to say ate, we say
Gegessen.
Gegessen.
how would you say yesterday we ate pizza? And the word pizza, by the way, is as free as it gets because it's literally the same word.
Gestern haben wir Pizza gegessen.
Gestern haben wir Pizza gegessen.
A very useful verb, to find. It can literally mean to find something, but it can also mean to find as in how you view or what your opinion is about something. And that is
Finden.
Finden.
so, for example, how would you say, I find that house very pretty?
Ich finde das Haus sehr schön.
Ich finde das Haus sehr schön.
Now, there are some verbs which are irregular in how they are conjugated in general, but also in how they are conjugated in the past tense. And this is one of those examples.
Ich habe es schön gefunden.
Ich habe es schön gefunden.
To show you another irregular example, the verb to drink in its regular form is
Trinken.
Trinken.
but to say I drank is
Ich habe getrunken.
Ich habe getrunken.
if you remember, the verb to go is gehen. A very important note about German verbs in the past tense is that there is a whole class of verbs which are conjugated completely differently, and that we do not use haben, we actually use sein. And these are verbs that have to do with motion. And so, for example, I went is
Ich bin gegangen.
Ich bin gegangen.
so to say, did you go home yesterday? We have to remember that we're not going to say hast du, that would be incorrect. We're going to say bist du.
Bist du gestern nach Hause gegangen?
Bist du gestern nach Hause gegangen?
Here's another example of a motion verb that uses sein instead of haben. The verb to drive is
Fahren.
Fahren.
so how do you think we might say I drove home?
Ich bin nach Hause gefahren.
Ich bin nach Hause gefahren.
Alright, so we have packed a whole bunch into this one lesson, which I think is a good thing. So let's just quickly review the different verbs and their past forms that we've seen. Ich habe etwas gemacht. I did something. Or I made something. Ich habe dir etwas gesagt. I said something to you, or I told you something. Sie hat meine Mutter gesehen. She saw my mom, or my mother. Hat Pizza gegessen. He ate pizza. Wir haben Wasser getrunken. We drank water. Du hast das Haus schön gefunden. You found the house beautiful. Sie sind nach Hause gegangen. They went home. Ich bin nach Kalifornien gefahren. I drove to California. Let's also quickly review these three words. Gestern, yesterday. Heute, today. Morgen, tomorrow. These three words we also learned in this lesson, and that is manchmal, sometimes, oft, often, and schon, already. These three we've learned in previous lessons, but since they have to do with time, we'll review them. Jetzt, now. Bald, soon. Später, later. Das hast du heute super gemacht. Ich habe es dir schon oft gesagt. Bald kannst du sehr gut Deutsch sprechen.